And we'd love to have Mike Schaefer from Husker247 there, but he's got other duties. But he does have a duty of joining us now. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are we doing today?
Cleveland rocks. That's how we're doing.
Cleveland does rock. It's just a nice week where you get to watch maybe the best player of your lifetime go for a 40-40 in a year in which a guy hits 50-50 and no one will talk about it, which could not be the more perfect.
It's the most Cleveland thing.
Yes,
sir.
That's an incredible season by him. Do you have anything to add to the Mazzucca news that's being reported in the last 30 minutes?
I do not.
Okay.
I am honestly behind on the time, so I'm going to learn as you tell me the news when you reiterate it to your listeners.
So it is being reported that he was spotted boarding a flight to San Francisco out of Eppley Airfield this morning by rivals.
Interesting. Yeah, well, I guess Matt Raiola will talk more about that after the game on Saturday. I don't know. The whole situation been odd from the moment that it started. The way that kind of Raiola has even talked about it has been somewhat odd. So yeah, we'll see how things play out for Nebraska and Micah Mazzucca.
So let's start with the offensive line, but let's talk about the left tackle. Your thoughts on the way Gatula played when he came into the game Friday, and what do you expect him moving forward at that left tackle spot?
Well, I think the interesting thing about Gunnar Gatula is that when he came into the game, I don't know that I once noticed Gunnar Gatula until overtime. And then obviously there's a bad sequence of events there. And overtime being what it is for Nebraska football and what it has been for the last decade, we can go into that if you want. But I thought it was a pretty good performance for somebody thrust into that situation in a Big Ten game and really the first, meaningful reps that he's had in that spot. And I thought he did well. I mean, so I don't know what the plan is to help Gunnar, week in and week out, because I don't know that you can just leave him on an island. They're going to probably have to chip. You might have to hold a running back a little bit. I don't know what that does in terms of your passing offense. But, if he's able to hold up and you only have to do that 50% of the time or 30% of the time, that could be a big boon for you. I want to put it this way. Gunnar Gatula is capable of giving you what Turner Corcoran was going to do. I just don't think there's going to be that big of a drop-off. So I'm not super concerned about what this means for the offensive line. The biggest loss is when they lost Teddy Prohaska, because I felt like they were going to take a step down there at left tackle. I don't think the step is as far from Turner Corcoran to Gunnar Gatula at this point. With what we've seen from Corcoran in his career and sort of what Gatula gave Nebraska in that, extended look on Friday.
The interior, and it'll shift over there because that was an abysmal rushing attack a week ago against Illinois, and a lot of people would point at the absence of Mazzucca. And now, if everything we're seeing is correct, going to be without him now for the remainder of the year. How that interior goes forward, and the options that you have to maximize everything you can, because this team still wants and needs to run the football, especially when we get into the season where, as we know in Big Ten play, when it's time to run the football, can you run the football can sometimes, and a lot of times, actually be the answer to whether you win a game or lose a game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the interior of Nebraska's offensive line is probably getting blamed a little bit much, given how much Illinois emphasized stopping the run on Friday. I mean, they stacked that box. They had a 5-man line. It wasn't like Nebraska was running against a 3-man front and had numbers and couldn't move anybody. They were going against someone who basically said, we're going to make it as hard for you to run the ball. And they did. And then I don't know that Nebraska did enough to creatively get the ball in space as an extension of the running game. And I don't know that the running game itself was created. There was a lot of inside zone. And it also felt like maybe there was an opportunity. This is all hindsight, and I don't want to make it seem like Satterfield missed this in the moment. It's easy to just sit back here and say these things right now. It's harder to do in the third quarter of a game. You wonder if Emmett Johnson could have helped more, if a different style of running back might have helped more against what Illinois was doing. But they were really loading that box, and I don't know that every team is going to be able to do that, in part because Illinois was like, all right, our secondary can match up against Nebraska's pack. It absolutely couldn't. I mean, Nebraska nearly threw for 300 yards. They had 3 touchdowns. Could have been a 4th touchdown. Could have been a 5th touchdown. So Nebraska was able to move the ball through the air because Illinois said, we're going to not let you move the ball on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
If every team chooses to do that and Nebraska is able to play just a little bit cleaner, they're going to be effective. I just don't know that teams are going to be able to load the box the rest of the season and get away with it the way that Illinois did. They did because Nebraska played poor in other aspects that allowed them to lose that game. Otherwise, it's not like they had an issue moving the ball or scoring. Their issue sort of came that they just couldn't do enough in the run game, and I think some of that can be rectified by having a little more creativity or even trying Emmett Johnson in some cases where, he can get a little smaller. He can hit the hole in a little bit different way. It felt like Dowdell maybe missed a few things a little there on Friday, but I'm not sure that it's entirely all the interior of the offensive line for why Nebraska wasn't able to run against Illinois.
Let's go to the other side of the ball. Mike Schaefer from Husker247 joining us and stopping the run. So in that game against Oregon State, there were 642 yards rushing combined. One team had 370. The other had 272. Purdue ran the ball well last year, and it was kind of just Maccabee. Now they've added Reggie Love the third, and you know that Nebraska in the fourth quarter broke down, well, actually in the second half, broke down against the run. How do you see this scenario playing out? The Maccabee-Love combo running against a defensive line that has kind of been licking their wounds for 2 weeks on bad run fits, sloppy tackling, big numbers against them, can't get off the field. How does this play out tomorrow in your mind?
Yeah, I think this is a big challenge game, in terms of Nebraska's coaches after the last couple of weeks of getting the performance that they have. I think that they're really going to lean on Nebraska being a veteran defense. A lot of guys with pride back there to play better than how they have, to try to get back to gang tackling and a little less individual stuff. They've kind of felt like they've been tackling high a little bit, or arm tackling, if you will, or trying to go for the big hit, and maybe a little bit more in terms of form tackling. And then the other big thing is you're curious if there's a little more rotation with their defensive front. I do think one of the things that sort of happened in both of the last 2 weeks where teams have been able to run on Nebraska is we just haven't seen as much play from the second and third string guys. They just haven't been at the level where they need to be. And that's one of the decisions that happens when Riley Van Poppel was a red shirt.
Mm-hmm.
You lose one of your best defensive options there, and you either have to lean on a tired Ty Robinson or a Nash Hutmaker, or you have to hope that a Vincent Carroll or a Kai Wallen or, an Elijah Judy can play at a higher level. And they just didn't play well against Illinois in their snaps. I mean, they were some of the lowest graded guys in terms of Pro Football Focus. They were able to run on those guys specifically. They were able to run on Robinson and Hutmaker too. But I think some of it is you're asking maybe a little bit too much of them. So I'm curious if the rotation changes a little. I think Nebraska, after 2 weeks of this, I think Tony White is the kind of guy that they got a lot of pride over there. I think they're going to look at this Illinois game as a challenge and really try to take that away from them. I don't know that you're as concerned about what Hudson Card and Illinois' passing game can do to you. I don't think that he is quite, has the weapons that Illinois did. Maybe you're a little more comfortable there, but then you get into the issue that I thought, even just beyond what Illinois did in the run game, what they did to Nebraska in play action was really the biggest culprit of the breakdown for the defense on Friday.
And part of that, and we saw this in Northern Iowa, was a lot of the quick passing game. It seemed to neutralize what Nebraska wanted to do. Illinois also did that, and RPOs, a lot of that too. Is that just something defensively, regardless of your ability at quarterback, and even Hudson Card, who's struggled this year throwing the football, that's just something defensively with the quick passing game you're going to have to expect?
Yeah, and then here's the thing. I mean, Nebraska plays a pretty soft hand coverage, so if it's a quick passing game and you don't tackle really well,
yep,
and they're able to get that ball out quickly, they can just keep kind of getting little chunks and moving and sustaining drives, and then you have to get one of those sort of negative plays that allows you to get off the field. Nebraska's defense isn't necessarily built to just force 3 and outs immediately. unless they can get more pressure right away, because they don't challenge receivers a lot at the line of scrimmage. You get a lot of free releases. You get a lot of quick throws. And so it was a combination on Friday at times where you're not real tight in coverage and you're not getting much pressure. So even if it was a little longer developing play, it felt like Altmaier had plenty of time to be able to look down the field and then throw in, some really bad key reads and eyes in the backfield on the play action. And it was a pretty simple slice of dice for a veteran quarterback. So they're going to have to figure out a way, or they're going to have to decide if they're more comfortable playing tighter in coverage. Now, that gets harder to do when you don't have Tommy Hill, but I thought Sierra Wright played pretty well. I still wonder if there isn't a world in which you get a Hill back and you can move right to the other side and maybe Buford moves back to safety. It's not that he's played bad at corner. I just don't feel like he's as valuable there as he might be at safety as part of that mix. And maybe that allows you to move one of those other guys or to maybe limit their exposure. So there's a lot they can do with the secondary. I'll be curious, if John Butler and Tony White come up with a different concept for this game or for Rutgers. But, we'll kind of see if they choose to play in tighter coverage or if they're going to continue to kind of play a hang defense and hope that they can start getting third down stops. I mean, that's kind of been the problem in back-to-back weeks.
All right, leading rusher tomorrow. Will he have a P on the side of his helmet or an N?
I am going to say a P because I still think Nebraska is going to have to move the ball through the air. I think they'll run better, and I think Purdue will get some things done in the running game. I just don't know that it's going to be an effective thing. And I think Purdue's going to struggle to pass. They really did against Oregon State. I mean, 55 yards in a game in which you're losing almost instantly. Like that's pretty remarkable. And so I just think they have to lean on the run in order to get some yardage. So we'll see what that looks like on Saturday morning.
We were talking a little bit about Dylan Raiola, his just overall importance, both for obvious reasons with his skill set, but also, he's one of the guys that has kind of that, calming presence. If you look at him during the week coming off of a loss, as opposed to coming off of the win against Colorado, exact same dude. The first bout of adversity for him in his college career comes last week in a loss, a couple throws back that he'd like to have, handling the football, a few moments like that. Schaefer, is there already, even in 4 games into Dylan Raiola's career, that there's that built-in confidence that maybe more so than a lot of guys on the team that he will be able to use that as a major learning moment, if you will come back stronger? The bounce back for him, you feel, will be very effective?
Well, if you believe in the idea that the experience that he's getting right now is going to be huge in terms of his development, then yes. I mean, he's going through everything for the first time. That was his first overtime game. That was his first, attempt at leading Nebraska to a score in the fourth quarter to take a lead in a critical moment. That was his first throw, the one to Luke Lindenmeyer, where you had an opportunity to hit a guy late in the game that could have been a game-changing moment. Like, these are all firsts for him. Saturday is going to be his first road game. It's going to be his first 11 a.m. kickoff. It's going to be his first opportunity to play in the sleepiest environment imaginable. And can he bring his own juice? Can he get the guys fired up? I mean, everything is a learning experience for a guy who is just now in his fifth. He's going to play his 5th game of his career. And the fact that he has as many skills as he does that he brings to it, it should make you feel good that every step of the way he is gaining information on how to do a job. And in theory, that information should allow him to do his job easier. And if he already has the natural talent and ability that we think he has, when you combine that with some experience, this is a guy that I can't wait to see what he looks like in November, let alone next year. What is he going to look like when UCLA comes to town or when Nebraska goes to USC? Is he going to be so good at that point? Because he's already kind of gone through some of this. I know I've had 8 games under his belt. Like, there's a lot of reason to be excited about what he looks like even this year because of what we're seeing in terms of his growth and maturation.
All right, score tomorrow.
Did you say score tomorrow?
I said what is the mic cut out. I said what? What is the score tomorrow?
I was gonna say I'm not playing any games. I have nothing.
Go score, Mike.
All right, so 27-9 is where I came down with it. I think it's going to be kind of
Let me look at score.
I think it's going to get off to a little bit of a slow start. It's worth noting Nebraska only has one win in West Lafayette in their last handful of tries.
COVID year,
worth
right?
noting that coaches playing in their first game in West Lafayette have lost in 2015 and 2019. So there's some ugly trends, but I just think Nebraska is a more talented team. I think last week was a bit of a wake-up call. Nebraska didn't play well. They still had an opportunity to win the game, but they can't just show up and expect to win. So I think Rule will have them ready to go. And I think they'll be able to handle the game. There's a part of me that thinks they could really run Purdue out of their own building. But we haven't seen Nebraska be able to do that on the road, so it's pretty hard to predict it.
Yeah. Shape, I appreciate it. Have a good weekend, my friend.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
That's